Here's just a quick video on how to freeze dry strawberries. With a lot of fruits, you're going to want to pre-cool the chamber, so we start by just turning on the recipe and just letting it cool for about 45 minutes. While that's cooling, we're going to go ahead and prepare the strawberries. I like to do thin slices, but I've heard that you can do half strawberries and they work pretty well too. If you're doing thicker slices like half strawberries, you just want to make sure to add a little bit more dry time because it's going to take longer to get the ice out of the food. With freeze drying, thinner is always going to be faster. This is 4 pounds of strawberries that we're doing in the medium Blue Alpine Freeze Dryer. We could go a lot more, but we wanted to make these look really pretty because we're going to be giving them out to neighbors. We could probably push this load to about 8 pounds if we pre-froze the strawberries and then just scattered them onto the trays. But with most fruits, if you lay them flat like this, you can get a better looking product in the end. You can use pre-frozen strawberries from the store, but just remember that these strawberries may be more delicate than fresh strawberries and you may need to cook them at a lower temperature. Every food has what's called a eutectic temperature, and what it is, it's the temperature at which the food starts to degrade. So if you get 30 or 40 hours into a load and it looks like the food has just collapsed in the center and it looks just wet, then you've probably hit the eutectic temperature. If you go over the eutectic temperature of the food and it collapses, then the food is ruined, but it's still edible. The end product will look something closer to fruit leather than it will to freeze-dried food. If you've gone over the eutectic temperature and ruined a batch of food, go ahead and try it again, but just bring the temperature down about 5 to 10 degrees. If you're trying a recipe for the first time or you don't have a lot of what you're trying to freeze dry, go ahead and just start with a smaller load and just test the recipe. By now the chamber should be cold, and again it's always best to put fresh fruit into a cold chamber just that way it doesn't wilt. This load is a little on the lighter end, so we're going to do a 7-hour freeze cycle with a 16-hour dry cycle. Set the pressure between 900 and 1200 millitorr. 1200 will be faster, but there'll be more water sent to the pump, and 900 will be slower, but there'll be less water sent to the pump. Once there's no longer water in the food, you'll notice that the mTORs will start to drop. If the original set pressure was say 900 and you notice that it drops down to about 200 and it's been there for an hour or two, then the food is likely done. Some machines bottom out at 400 millitorr, so it's just wherever your machine bottoms out at. Here, my cycle is close to being done, but even after the cycle completes, the heat in the vacuum will continue to stay on, just at lower rates. The heat will lower to about 80% of the set point, and the vacuum pump will turn on intermittently to keep the machine under vacuum. What this does is if the machine finishes in the middle of the night, then the food is still technically being freeze-dried. And you can never hurt food by freeze-drying it too long, you can only hurt it if you get it over its eutectic temperature. This is what the cycle complete page looks like. You can either add more time, or you can defrost, or you can just go home. If there's any question on whether or not the food is dry, just go ahead and add more time to the cycle. At any point in the cycle, you can pause it, and you can go back to the cycle complete page. Here, we're going to defrost the chamber, but you do want to make sure to take your food out of the chamber first, otherwise when you defrost it, it'll rehydrate the food. Once we're on the defrost page, it'll ask us if we want to turn on the fan, and that only makes the defrost go faster, but it's not needed. At this point, let the pressure back into the chamber and take the food out. If you live in a humid area, you're going to want to move quickly to get the food packaged, otherwise it can rehydrate as well. Even though I know these strawberries are done, I still will take the thickest pieces and check them for ice just to make sure that they're done. For home use, you can just take the thickest strawberry and crack it in half and then put it against your cheek and then check for coldness, but in a commercial setting you're going to want to use a better technique. Something like a thermal imaging camera or water activity meter. For defrosting the machine, I have mine tilted back just a hair, so that way all the water runs down to the back. I drain mine into a bucket, but I've seen people drain them into a sink as well. We have small kids at home, so I try to use a 2.5 gallon bucket, or if I use the 5 gallon bucket, I just make sure to empty it more often. If you want the strawberries to look pretty and retain their shape, you're going to want to use jars or some kind of hard container. Bags will often crush the strawberries, so I use those more for long-term food storage or just camping. For those of you with a cottage food license, strawberries are one of the things that are covered under a cottage food license. Obviously, you want to check your local and state laws, but strawberries are acidic enough to count in most places. I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk about pressure errors and what causes them. The first thing that you're going to want to check is that all the valves are shut and that the door is closed. If the valve is shut and it's still not sealing, check the door and make sure that the door has a good seal. If for some reason the door has lost its seal, it could just be that the door latch on the handle just needs to be bent back into place. If the valve and the door check out just fine, the most likely culprit is just liquid water in the chamber. If there's any liquid water in the chamber when the vacuum turns on, that liquid water immediately boils off and raises the pressure in the chamber. These machines get down pretty close to the vacuum of space, so if there's even just a little bit of water in the chamber, it'll pick it up as raising pressure. We see this most often when people are trying to skip the freeze cycle. They put cold food onto warm trays, and that causes just a little bit of ice to melt onto the trays. And the same thing goes for the chamber. If you're taking cold trays out of the freezer and then putting them into a warm chamber, you're also going to get a little bit of melt back. What you want to do is you want to take cold food and put it onto cold trays and put that into a cold chamber. If any point of that is warm, you're going to get a little bit of melt back going on. Another thing that can cause vacuum errors is just having the Militor set too low. One thing you may try is just setting the set pressure just a little higher than where you were. And just remember that vacuum pumps are consumable, so if it's about 5 years old, it could also be that the vacuum pump has just gone bad. If you do all this and you're still getting vacuum errors, just give us a call and we can walk you through it. Switching back over to strawberries, we're just going to make sure that these are sealed up really well so that they'll last 30 years. A lot of times I'll put 2 seals on the bag just to make sure that it holds really well. In one of our next videos, we're going to try a yogurt parfait for camping, so if you want to see that, go ahead and subscribe. Thanks for watching.